All right, everybody, welcome back. Today we are going to talk about succession, and we're going to look at how ecosystems change in response to disturbances. We're going to explain the difference between primary and secondary succession, and then we're going to take a look at biodiversity and explain why it's important within our ecosystems. So when we talk about ecological succession, we're really talking about how does an ecosystem recover after it's been damaged. It's a series of predictable and orderly changes that happen in an ecosystem over time. It can happen as species die out and other ones move in, and it often occurs after some sort of disturbance like a forest fire or a volcanic eruption or some other disturbance. For primary succession, this happens when the disturbance completely eliminates the old community and that there's no soil left. So things like retreating glaciers, volcanic eruption. And what happens with primary succession is that you're going to find these pioneer species that will be the first species to come back into the area. So species like this, there's species that are called lichen. They grow on bare rocks, and why they're important is because that they can take nitrogen from the atmosphere and put it in and basically make soil. And so because primary succession means that there's no soil, you need some pioneer species that can help and assist kind of in doing that, in addition to some of just the erosion and things like that take place over time. With primary succession, it's going to take a pretty long time to recover the community that they had before. So it's going to take many, many years. You can see till 15 years, there's only rocks pretty much, and that would be where your pioneer species come in. And then from 15 to 35 years, now you're starting to see grasses and then some low plants, and then it's going to be, 100 years before you're starting to see some big trees and mature communities. With secondary succession, the soil is going to remain. So this would be something like a forest fire. It's going to impact the community, but not completely destroy it. And so because of that, you can have new vegetation growing much faster. So this would be things like wildfires, hurricanes, natural disturbances, some human disturbances like farming or logging. But this process takes a lot less time. So you have the soil there, you're going to be able to get seeds in there to regrow grasses. And this, again, is a natural progression. It happens naturally in forests. After a forest fire, you're going to see this process of succession. Whenever we talk about succession, we talk about it reaching a climax community, which is a steady state, meaning that that's kind of where it's at an equilibrium and it's balanced. And so normally in secondary succession, you'll get back to that original climax community. It just maybe it recovers in some spots more than others. If damage is really extensive, then you might not be able to recover all of that at the end of succession. All right, so we're going to briefly talk about climate just to define it. Whenever we think about climate versus weather, weather is that day to day, oh, it's raining, oh, it's sunny, oh, it's snowing in April because it's Pennsylvania. So climate, though, is going to be the average conditions for a region, and then microclimates would be variations within small areas. Some factors that influence climate would be things like solar energy trapped in the atmosphere. This is looking at the different gases that are released into the atmosphere, like carbon dioxide, trapping greenhouse gases and changing the climates. Latitude and solar energy, so the latitude and where the location on the planet is going to determine how much sunlight and how much solar energy that place receives. And then heat transport in the biosphere, meaning how does hot and cold air flow, and so that's also going to impact the climate of the area. All right, so we'll take also a look at biodiversity. Biodiversity is going to be the variation of organisms on Earth. So we can see diversity within an ecosystem, that there's a lot of habitats, different communities that are there. We can see diversity of species, number of different species. We can see genetic diversity within a species. All of these are really important, and the reason why they're important is because all of that variation allows there to be new developments in medicine and agriculture, and how we maintain quality of soil and air. Diversity also, in terms of evolution, and this is important, is that it allows these more adaptations, which allows species to survive. So if the environment changes, species have more adaptations that are going to allow them to survive. So if you have a really narrow species, if a species, is all the colors of the rainbow versus just one color, well then if something happens that now predators can see that one color better, then that species is going to have a less of a likelihood to survive. Now, some threats to biodiversity that we see altered habitats, we see hunting, we see invasive species, which means a non-native species coming into an area. We see pollution, we see climate change, and a lot of these have to do with things that humans are doing and things that we are disturbing and altering within our ecosystems. So when we talk about different disturbances, threats to biodiversity, we can also mention our ecological footprint, and this is the amount of land and resources that individuals or communities require in order to sustain them. So what do we require in terms of natural resources? How much waste do we put back into those environments and ecosystems that we are in? And you hear a lot with companies now about having a small ecological footprint and reducing their greenhouse gases and reducing the waste that they have and the resources that they need in an effort to sustain the world ecosystems and kind of sustain those a little bit better. So something to think about as we look at ecology as well.